Is it possible that the Big 12 could go back to the old days, go back to the way it used to be, and go back to having divisions in the conference? Well, according to a recent article by Dennis Dodd, that actually is on the table. And we're going to talk about that in this episode of Couz's Corner, which is brought to you by Katz, Cantor, Stone Street, and Buckner Attorneys at Law and Appalachia Digital. And we're going to have that conversation, and I'm going to give you my thoughts about it, why it is or is not a good idea. And also, I'm going to look at a few other options that I think the Big 12 should consider. And we're going to do all that right after this word from one of those sponsors. Since 1931, the attorneys at Katz, Cantor, Stone Street, and Buckner have been the voice for victims who have suffered serious injury or death. They have a fierce passion for truth and justice and a sincere compassion for those who have been wronged by others. Whether you have been in a car accident or fighting with an insurance company, or you or a loved one has suffered serious injury or death due to medical negligence, we will ensure your voice is heard loud and clear. Katz, Cantor, Stone Street, and Buckner will ensure there is justice for all West Virginians because we are your lawyer, your voice. Visit us at yourlawyeryourvoice.com. What is up, and welcome into another edition of Couz's Corner, your home for top-shelf college football news and analysis around the West Virginia Mountaineers, the Big 12, and conference realignment. Welcome into the show. Thank you for joining me. Let's go ahead and dive into this show, and let's talk about a recent report by Dennis Dodd over at CBS Sports. By the way, congratulations, Dennis, on your upcoming retirement. He has announced he will be retiring on April 10th. But in a recent article, Dennis talked about how the Big 12 is actually looking at potentially going back to divisions. Now, what brought this about is all this talk about play-in games to determine what teams may get into the college football playoff from these conferences. Now, we've all heard about the Big Ten and SEC looking to get automatic qualifiers, 4 automatic qualifiers from each of their leagues into the CFP, which would likely leave the Big 12 and ACC each with 2 automatic qualifiers. And there's been talk about how those automatic qualifiers would be determined. Leagues could start doing play-in games at the end of the season to determine who gets in. And there are a lot of different ways they could format those play-in games. And one way the Big 12 was actually looking at includes going back to divisions. Now, divisions were basically done away with in most of these leagues because there were oftentimes moments at the end of the year where you would have one team from one division who would be your best team in the conference. And then from the other division, because that division might be weaker, you might have a 3 or 4 loss team representing that division in the conference title game. Well, if that team happens to win the conference title game and knock out your top team, that team may not make the college football playoff. Then you get no teams in the college football playoff in the 14 format. Well, now that they're going to the 12-team format, and now especially since they're looking at automatic qualifiers, that won't necessarily be an issue anymore because of the way you can structure the play-in games. And according to this article by Dodd, which I'm not going to read the article, I am going to link to it in the description so you can go read it for yourself. But there are 2 different ways, 2 different models to consider for the Big 12 that they're considering right now. And I'm going to give you these 2 models, and then I'm going to give you a couple other options I think the Big 12 should consider, and the one I like the most. But the first option is keeping things the way they are as far as formatting your format of the conference. You know, the 16-team league with no divisions. You have the top 4 regular season teams qualifying with the number 1 seed playing the number 4 seed and number 2 playing number 3, with the 2 winners on that championship weekend in December would advance to the college football playoff. Now, if you use last year's standings, that would put Arizona State against Colorado in a game, and then you would have Iowa State playing BYU in another game with the 2 winners making the CFP. The other option that they're considering puts the 16-team league into 2 8-team divisions. We'd have the 2 first-place teams in each division qualifying for the play-in games, along with the 2 teams with the best records, but they would not have to be from the same division. So if you win your division, you're automatically into the play-in games. And then the next 2 teams would be determined by record, not by where they finished in the division. And obviously you've got complicated tiebreaker scenarios that may determine who wins these divisions in that case, but that's another story for another day, another topic. You still would have had the same 4 teams in this case. The way Dennis Dodd lays out these divisions, you would have had the same 4 teams playing in these games. Because the way he has the divisions divided is by East and West. And I'm going to go ahead and put up to put up a overlay of what Dennis had laid out. I'm going to put a visual on the screen for you. The red teams in red would have been the East Division. It would have been West Virginia, Cincinnati, Iowa State, Kansas, Oklahoma State, Baylor, and UCF. The teams in the blue circle, or blue blob in this case, not much of a circle, but the blue blob would be Utah, BYU, Colorado, Texas Tech, TCU, Houston, Arizona, and Arizona State. Now, I'm not sure why he had Houston in the West and Baylor in the East, but I'm not too worried about that. But this is what Dennis Dodd used for his example. And in this example, you would have had Arizona State winning a division, and you would have had Iowa State winning a division. So both of them would have made it to the play-in games. And then you would have had Colorado and BYU, who both would have happened to be from the Big 12 West in this case, would have been the next two teams in. So you would have only had one team representing the Big 12 East in the play-in games in this case. Now, I went ahead and decided to go forward. What would a North-South look like? I didn't really care for this East-West division deal. So I decided to take a look at a North-South division. What would that look like? And here it is. The blue is North, red is South. Your North division would be West Virginia, Cincinnati, Iowa State, Kansas State, Colorado, Utah, BYU. South would be Oklahoma State, Texas Tech, TCU, Baylor, Houston, UCF, Arizona State. Now, if you're the Texas schools or Oklahoma State, you probably like this because it limits your travel for the most part. But if you're UCF or you're Arizona State, or even West Virginia, Cincinnati, it doesn't help you a ton, does it? I don't really see. I do like this. I do think I like this layout better than the East-West because it keeps more of your rivalries in divisions. You have Kansas in the same division with Kansas State. You have Kansas State in the same division with Iowa State. You have the Holy War together. You have the Territorial Cup together. You have all the Texas rivalries together. It keeps your rivalries intact, yet you still get the two divisions, and it's easier to determine who gets into the playoff, right? But there's actually another scenario I like even better. And I think it would also be an easier way to determine your playoff or your play-in game participants, and that's if they go to pods. If you go to 4 14 pods, here are the pods I laid out. I've got pod 1 is West Virginia, Cincinnati, UCF, and Houston. Now, of course, Houston and UCF are a little odd there because of geography, but UCF is actually closer to Houston than it is to Morgantown, is my understanding, especially from a plane route perspective. It's a direct flight. You can get a direct flight from Orlando to Houston, two major cities. I like that layout. And then you've got what I would call the North Pod with Iowa State, Kansas State, Colorado. You have the South Pod of Oklahoma State, TCU, Baylor, and Texas Tech. And then what I'll call the West Pod with Utah, BYU, Arizona State. But this way, you get your forward pod. The winner of each pod gets into the play-in games. The pod winner with the best record plays the pod winner with the worst record or standings in the conference, whatever. You can still use conference standings and base it on that. There's a lot of ways you could do it. But your 4 pod winners get first place in each pod gets into the play-in games. It's that simple. I think it's an easy way to do it. It keeps your rivalries intact. Again, you've got Utah, BYU, Arizona State all in the same pod. You've got 2 major rivalries in that pod. You've got Farmageddon in the same pod. You've got Kansas State in the same pod. You've got TCU Baylor in the same pod. You have Texas Tech in the same pod with their Texas counterparts. You've got the UCF Houston rivalry together that used to be a rivalry in the AAC. And you've got West Virginia Cincinnati together. Now, that's not necessarily a big rivalry, but it alleviates travel concerns. West Virginia would get to play at both of their Eastern time zone counterparts every single season. It would help limit travel to a degree. And then you could play, obviously you would have your 3 pod games every year, plus you would play, 6 games outside of your pod. You would play all 4 from one pod, and then you could play 2 from another pod. And those would rotate every year. I don't see why this wouldn't work. I actually think a pod system is the best way to go here. With an even number of 16 teams, it's 4 even pods. It's easy peasy, lemon squeezy. But what do you think? I want to hear your thoughts in the comments section. Which format do you like? Do you want to see the Big 12 go back to divisions? Would you rather see 2 8-team divisions? Would you rather see pods, or would you just rather it stay the way it is right now? And if they go to this automatic qualifier system in the playoff, would you rather just the Big 12 to base it on the top 4 seeds and top 4 teams in the conference all play each other and leave it at that? And in that case, your Big 12 champion would be the regular season champion, right? Now, if you go to a pod system or a division system, I don't know that you would really be able to crown a conference champion in that case. But does that even matter in today's day and age? I don't know. Let me know what you think in the comments section about this scenario. I'm going to leave a link to Dennis's article for you to check out on your own. I'd love to hear your thoughts on that and on this video. I want to give my VIP member shout outs to this episode. They are Bill G, Phil Masters, Tom Reinhart, Houston Cougars Germany, and Brandon Bailey. Thank you all for your support. If you want to be a VIP member, hit the join button below or go over to my channel homepage and hit it over there beside my profile photo, or hit the link in the description box. You can join, and you can also get your random shout out. You get first dibs in comments during live shows, and I also do the occasional early access to some of my content for my club level members only. And then all members, of course, get the shout outs and the first dibs in chats. It's also a very easy way to support my work here and help me keep the lights on. Another easy way to support me, and it's absolutely free, hit the thumbs up button. Like this video. You can leave a comment like I mentioned. Subscribe to the channel here. Help me get to my next big goal of 10,000. You can also subscribe to my basketball channel, Hoops from the Heels. And I have a brand new website I'd love for you to check out. It's called wvsportschat.com. Please go check out that. There are articles over there by myself and some others, and I will be adding more writers here in the next few days, hopefully. But we put up West Virginia content on football, basketball, and even baseball over there on the site. So go check it out. Enough for the advertising, except for the shout-outs to my sponsors, Cats Counter, Stone Street, and Butner, and Appalachia Digital, your home for top-shelf website design. And if you want to be found on Google, they can help you with that as well. They are also, by the way, the designers of my new website. So go check them out, appalachiadigital.com/Couz. Thanks for tuning into this episode. Check out this one in the corner of your screen. YouTube says you'll like it. You may also like this basketball video right here from Hoops from the Heels. Thanks for tuning in. Hope the rest of your day's top shelf. God bless you, and Q Country Roads.